What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Today we're going to get started on my next project here. What you guys are looking at is, I think it's a 2013 Sure Track. It is a 6x12 little single axle trailer. So if you go way back in the beginning of the channel, over a year ago now, one of my first, I want to say successful video, one of my first videos that did halfway decent was we took my little 5x8 trailer and did some cheap modifications to it. We put a winch on and a spare tire. But since that video, it might have been before, I actually went through and totally rewired that thing too. Now that little 5x8 trailer, it was very good to me. I give next to nothing for it. And just about every wheel horse you guys have seen on this channel, and any lawnmower or tractor for that matter, I hauled home on that trailer. I didn't really need to get a replacement. The channel's growing, my mowing business is growing, I'm getting a little bit more busy, and I wanted a little bit more room to well, let's be honest, to put more junk on to bring home. Now right off the bat, you can see it's got some issues. Both fenders, not just this one, have got some pretty bad cancer going on. We have also got a couple broken lights, a couple burnout marker lights on it. You can see that other fender there, it's got a rust hole up top. It's got a couple others starting to come through. Wheel's kind of rusty. And an issue, I actually didn't notice this till the other day. The wiring is starting to split at the connector. So we're going to be taking care of that wiring issue there. We're going to be putting new lights on it. We're going to be fixing the rust. And most importantly, there's no winch on it. And as you guys have learned over the last year, most of the junk I bring home doesn't run. And I'm going to have to get a winch put back on this thing. So we have got a whole mess of parts that's going to be going back on this thing. We've got some new lights, some new wiring, a new winch. We've got a Weedeater bracket. Vevor hooked us up with a tongue box. I'm also waiting on 2 brand new fenders and inner fenders. We're going to be welding on this. We're going to get started on this thing. Well, I think the best bet on where to start is going to be these fenders. Now, when I originally bought this trailer, I was just going to kind of cut this square out, weld a new patch in. But then I kind of got looking closer, and these have got quite a bit of rust on them. The other side is even worse. There's another spot coming through there. So instead, I found a company, I believe it's called Southwest Wheel Company. They didn't sponsor this or nothing. They had what I needed. So I've got a brand new pair of fenders with the inner liners coming as well. So it looks like the easiest thing to do is we're going to go ahead and jack this axle up, get it put on jack stands. We will get these wheels off and see the best way to go about getting these fenders off. Well, with that out of the way, we can get a better idea of what's going on here. So from what it looks like, the only places that these fenders are actually welded is this piece of angle iron here. They've got a bead going all the way across there. Nothing up top, which is kind of surprising to me. And then nothing on the bottom out here. It looks like they did a stitch right here and maybe right here where it contacts this frame rail. Besides that, that's really it holding this fender on. Now this inner shield, hi everybody, this inner shield, they have got, I don't know, they stitch weld it like there, there, and there. So it looks like to me the way they put this together, they put the fender on first and then they stuck the inner fender on and welded that in. So it shouldn't be too bad to take it off. When we get the camera set up, we're going to burn both sides of this off and get it cleaned up and get ready for the new ones. Hey, you stay back when I'm doing this. I'm going to throw sparks everywhere. Hear me? Anybody but Logano, please. Anyway, well, we got both fenders off. Although these things weren't fully welded, they were welded in all the right places as far as making it impossible to get in there to cut everything. But you can just see how chewed up these things actually are. So it appears the way they did this, they weld the fenders on first, and this would have been the passenger side front. This would have been towards the tow truck. So they welded it real good here. This is where that 8-inch long solid weld was on that cross member. And then they go through and they put stitch welds on this inner panel all the way across the top and the corner. And the same thing here. I figured out it was easier just to hack each corner off to give me access to the welds that held the fender onto the trailer. Once I got them cut, then I could come up here and cut the welds on top that essentially welded the top of the fender to the bottom of the side rail. So I did get all the welds cleaned up. For the most part, it is ready to get new fenders. I am going to probably get some weld through primer. You can see where this was already starting to rust and rot from moisture getting down in there between it. And this might surprise a lot of you, but I'm not planning on repainting this thing. These come powder coated, the entire thing. And when I tell you this is a super strong powder coat, I ain't kidding. This stuff is so thick, it was all I could do to get through it with my flap disc and my cutoff wheel. So the last thing I want to do is spend a week trying to get this old coating off, and I'm not even going to bother painting over it. Any areas we touch, obviously, I'm going to paint. I'm going to paint the leaf springs and the axle and stuff. But taking that stuff off, taking the wheel off, it did reveal another problem, and I want to take a look at that with you guys. And yes, I know I sound like a sick dog right now. This came over me the other day, and boy, I tell you, throat's real itchy. I've been coughing. Anyway, so if you guys look here, you've got quite a buildup. To me, looks like grease with dirt. This right here is the back side of the seal that goes on the spindle. And you can see how much buildup there actually is. And in my opinion, it actually looks a little damp. But I think we better play it safe. I already wanted to pull the hubs off anyway so we could repack the wheel bearings. So I think I'm going to go ahead and pull it off and try to get a seal number. And we will try to replace both of these wheel seals on both sides. Oh, there's our outer bearing. You can definitely tell this thing's been leaking for a while. So it's probably a good thing we went ahead and did this. Well, while we wait for the new trailer hub parts to show up, I figure we can move on to these new fenders. FedEx dropped this box off a little bit ago. This is from a company called Southwest Wheel. Now, they're not sponsoring this video. I paid full price for these parts. I just like sharing good companies with you guys when I come across them. So this setup right here, it came with 2 new fenders and 2 new inner fenders. It was like 120 bucks free shipping. Not too bad in my opinion. I did call and talk to them on the phone about something else, and they were super friendly on the phone. So if you guys are needing some parts for your trailer, be sure to check them out. And yes, I know I sound like I'm dying. I promise you I'm not. It's just this head cold. But I did go ahead and get this one fender mocked up on the trailer. The only difference I noticed is that this front, actually both ends, is about 2 inches shorter than the ones we took off. So the original fenders went down almost flush with the bottom of this. Not a big deal. It's still going to line up perfect for me to re-weld it. We're just not going to have the protection of keeping some of the road moisture off the back side of this light. Not a big deal. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing centered up exactly where I want it, and we'll go ahead and start burning these on. Now, instead of welding the fender on first and then welding the inner fender in second, I suppose you could go ahead and weld that inner fender to the fender and then weld the assembly to the trailer. I'm not going to do that. As I showed there earlier on, that inner fender covers up some crucial mounting for this outer fender. That's why I'm opting to do it this way. Well, for the most part, the welds ain't too bad. That's definitely the best of the bunch. These ones on the inside, I'm just gonna say I ground them down flush because I needed clearance for that inner panel, not because they were awful. Well, it's not perfect by any means, but it's welded solid and it shouldn't fall off. I'm gonna go ahead and get that other side put on and I'll bring you guys back. Well, we got this side done as well. I decided to do this one a little bit different. Instead of trying to stitch weld that inner fender to the fender itself, I actually drilled some holes in it so I could do, I believe they're called rosette welds. Kind of did spot welds all the way around. Anyway, I'm gonna get both of these fenders wiped down. We're gonna go ahead and put a coat of primer on it. I'm sure the proper thing to do would have been to actually pre-paint these fenders with some weld through primer. At least in the spots where I'm not going to be able to get paint on. Yeah, that would have been a smart thing to do, but that is not what I did. But you guys can learn from my mistakes. These fenders come from Southwest with a oily coating on them. I'm assuming to keep them from rusting, sitting on the shelf. We got to make sure we get that stuff wiped off real good. Now the next thing I want to do while this primer is drying, I do want to go ahead and clean up some of the rust on these leaf springs and the axle. And once that's all done, we're going to be painting everything gloss black. But I didn't want to, you know, paint this stuff first and then get primer all over it. Anyway, going to be trying out a new toy. This is a McGraw mini needle scaler, I think they call it. These work pretty good. Now it's got some gloss black Rust-Oleum. Not going for perfection here, guys, just trying to spruce it up a little bit. But this is the paint I'm going to use on the fenders as well. You know, you'd think you spend $7 on a can of paint, you'd expect the whole thing to be usable. But with Rust-Oleum, it's like a 50% chance that you'll never get to use more than half the can before it just quits working right. So I had to break out a brand new can, but we are back in business. Well guys, I am pretty happy with how these fenders turned out. Nothing like a grinder and some gloss paint to hide my crappy welds. But the first coat's on, we're going to let that tack up. I'll take a look at it and see if I need to touch it up in a couple places, but all in all, I'm pretty happy with that. And while I was in the process of getting these painted, I had a package show up, and it should be the parts we need to get our hubs put back together. Well, if you guys remember, the whole reason we pulled these hubs off is because I found a bad grease seal, wheel seal, hub seal, whatever you want to call it. Now, I looked all over that seal. I could not figure out a seal number off of it. I ended up doing some research and figured out that these are called 3,500 pound hubs. Followed that rabbit hole and it led me to the seals I was going to need to replace the bad one. Now, if I went that route, I still wanted to go ahead and pull the bearings out of it and check them and repack them. And at that point, I might as well replace the other wheel seal on the other side. So I was looking at about $10 in parts, and probably an hour or so of labor. Well, I found another option, and it's kind of funny. This is, I guess, the way just the world is going. It's cheaper to just throw away what you got and buy all new. And case in point right here, on the good old Amazon, this 2-piece set right here comes with everything you need. 2 brand new hubs, lug nuts, dust caps, washers, axle nuts, all the bearings and the seals we need, even the cotter pins, for about 65 bucks. Now, if I was trying to stick to a budget on this, I'd see no issue with just ordering the new seal and installing that and going on my way. And because I know some of you guys are going to say it, I want to show you something. So this is the original bearing off the trailer, and if you look real close, stamped in there is the word China. So for all the haters out there when it comes to using cheaper aftermarket stuff, this right here is the case in point. This American built trailer is using cheaper aftermarket Chinese built bearings, just like what came in that kit right there. And I wouldn't even be surprised if whoever built this trailer ordered their parts from the same manufacturer that built this stuff. So say what you want about it, the parts are affordable, and I had them on my doorstep in about 2 days. So it is what it is. Well, we have got the inner bearing and the seal installed. Let's go ahead and put it on here. Now, normally I would pack this hub full of grease before I put it on. Since this has got that grease circle on the outside, I'm not going to. I did pack both bearings though, but once we get this put back together, I'll hit it with the grease gun. Now, I'm sure there's a proper torque spec for this hub, this axle nut. I don't know what it is. I'm going to do it the way that I do it. Obviously, you guys do your own research. Normally, you tighten it until it's snug. Give the hub a good spin, and what you're trying to do is set the bearings and set the seal on the spindle. Usually I back it off like 1/8 of a turn until we got some good free spin in the hub. All right, then it's just a matter of lining up our new cotter pin. Well, there we go. I'm not going to torture you guys and make you all watch me do the other side, so I will bring you back when we're ready to move on. Well, we are ready to put the wheels and tires back on this thing, and I am ready to have it mobile again in case I need to use it, because my grass business is in full swing right now. Well, when it's not raining, that is. Yeah, it's kind of like a double insult, because the more it rains, the more the grass grows. But the more it rains, the less time I have to mow it. I don't know how you guys do it for a living every day. Doing 10, 15 yards a day is crazy to me. I'm lucky if I can do my 6 a week. There we go. Well, we are finally ready to move on to something a little bit more fun than just painting rust. We are going to work on getting this new 2,500 pound winch installed on that trailer. Now, this is the exact same winch I had on my other 5x8. It worked very well for me. Anything I hooked to it, it would pull just fine. So I didn't really want to go crazy and get some high rated winch when I don't really need it. But we've got a couple different options on how I could mount this, and I want to explain why I'm going the direction I'm going. Now, Harbor Freight also sells this Badland winch mount. This is supposed to be a universal kind of thing, and it's supposed to work just fine with this, and it does for the most part. But there's a couple issues that you're going to deal with if you try to use this bracket with this winch, pretty much any bracket winch in general. So, the first problem, if you go to bolt this winch on like so, you're going to have an issue to where you're going to have bolt heads or nuts sticking down on the bottom side of this, preventing you from bolting this flat on something unless you drill all the way through whatever it is you're mounting it to. Now, if I was to mount this to the deck of my trailer, I'm going to have to drill through some angle iron, 2-inch thick deck boards with a sandwich plate on bottom, and you're talking about, you know, 4 or 5 inch long bolts. I just don't want to go that route. And it's kind of a pain in the butt if I ever needed to remove this. You're talking about taking all that stuff off, just a pain in the butt. Problem number 2, if you do go ahead and mount this flat to whatever it is you're putting it on, and you through bolt it to whatever it might be, you go to put this cable stay, I don't know the technical term, you guys will have to tell me in the comments. You go to bolt this onto this bracket, and you can see another issue, you guys might not be able to. These bolt holes do not line up with this sitting flat. So in theory, this winch plate really actually needs to be up off the mounting surface at least 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, something like that. So you're talking about adding complexity to this that you really don't have to unless it's just your only option. So I want to show you what I decided to do. Well, with the help of my special software program called CAD, you know, cardboard aided design, I've come up with this. I've actually got a tongue box that we're going to be installing right here to hold all my rigging and my battery, stuff like that. So I wanted the backside of this to be flush with the front of the trailer. Second reason, like I mentioned, I want access to the bolts that hold the winch to the plate. I don't want to have to lay down on the ground and finagle with all that. I want to be able to just reach up here, undo the 4 bolts, take the winch off, the bracket stays on, swap it out, whatever I got to do. Now the other reason, and this is probably the biggest reason, the way I had it set up on my old trailer, it worked just fine, don't get me wrong, but anytime I would winch something up on this trailer, unless my trailer angle was just right, my wire rope always drug on the back of the trailer. Not that that's the end of the world, it's just it's hard on your wire rope and it's hard on your trailer. So if we can prevent that by raising the winch up a couple feet, I say we try it. Now I looked all over trying to find a straight answer on the strength of a 2-inch square tube, 1/4 inch wall, how much weight it could actually handle before it starts to give. And I'm seeing anything from 500 pounds to 1,000 pounds of lateral force with like 8-foot spacing. I don't know how much I trust that, but I do know that this is some pretty strong stuff. We're going to cut this top plate. I'll probably put a couple holes in it to do some rosette welds down the center. We have this whole edge right here that I can weld to this 2x2. And I'm also going to cut a couple angle pieces that is going to bridge this bracket to another side of this 2x2 square for even more strength. Now, worst case, the first time I go to use this, if I see this rail starting to bend or give, only thing I have to do is just add more support to it. It's not going to be the end of the world. I could very easily get a piece of angle iron and run it from the base up to the front of that since we've got all that extra space there. I can also add an extra piece of angle iron from there to there. So we've got options. This is more of, I'm gonna see if it's gonna work and hope that it does, but you know. So I've got a big old piece of 1/4 inch steel plate. I'm gonna get that out, get it cleaned up. We're gonna get my template put on it. We're gonna get it cut, and yeah. Well, I have transferred the template over to this plate steel. I did change it a little bit. That one was right like 11.5 inches. I made this one 12 just for the sake of math. I'm gonna use the old death wheel. We're gonna cut this out. Oh yeah, now we're getting somewhere. Oh, that's kind of heavy. Yeah, I think that'll work just fine, guys. So the next thing I'm gonna do, because I'm not very good at math and all that good stuff, I'm going to do some more CAD and get the side cut out pieces made. And I would like to, I don't know, unless it's gonna mess it up, I'd like to weld the angle iron on, at least tack it in place and make sure that it's all good and square before I fully burn this thing to the trailer. Well guys, using some very in-depth and complicated theories, I managed to find the perfect triangle cutout for this. Definitely not because I just guessed and got lucky. And lucky we did get. That's not too bad. Yeah, all I really did was I took a straight ruler, measured from this brace to the tip of this point, and I know that this rail here is 2 inches thick, give or take, and that's how I got the angle. Probably not the proper way, but hey, it works.
Welcome to my party, we're just getting started. A life is a dream or a nightmare scarring. Hand me a drink, cause I think I'm going all in. Get me a shrink who can catch me.
Well, it's not my best work, but I think it'll be just fine, guys. I was reading the comments the other day, and I actually saw one from a guy talking about using one of those titanium 125 welders, and I agree with him. It's really not a bad welder for the price. I will say, usually the thicker the metal you're trying to weld, the better it works. I struggle with the thin stuff, but this thick stuff, it usually does a pretty good job. But anyway, I got it burned in all the way around. I went ahead and prepped my area here. I'm gonna get this centered up, clamped down, and we're gonna get this welded on. I have measured this like 3 different times, so it should be as center as possible. I am very happy with how this has turned out. Like I've said before, and I'll say it again, I am not a professional welder. Sometimes I get lucky and I can stick stuff together. But yeah, this turned out pretty good. Not perfect by any means, but for using a flux core, I'm very happy with it. And I don't think we have to worry about that plate ever coming off. All right, I got the winch plate mocked up on here. I'm gonna go ahead and mark these holes and get them drilled. And then we're gonna paint it. I'm sure some of you guys noticed that I didn't actually weld this plate to the trailer on the inside. And that was for 2 reasons. One, I don't think it needs it. I mean, we have got 1, 2, 3, 4, we've got 5 points of contact or weld right now. And the second one, and the most important, is I don't feel like laying on my back and trying to weld overhead on the inside of this. It's, yeah. I'm terrible at overhead welding.
Hearing like 300,000, 350,000. Even Penske himself was, I don't know if he still is.
Well, that new winch is looking right at home. I'm really happy with how this is turning out. But mounting the winch is only half the battle. We still have got to figure out how to power that thing. The last time I did one of these, if you guys remember way back when, to power it, I actually made like a jump box. I put a U1 battery in it. I put the winch controller inside of it. And anytime I would go somewhere and I knew I had to use the winch, I'd just grab that battery box and I'd throw it in the truck with me. It worked fine, don't get me wrong, but I've been known to forget things, and it was just kind of clunky, kind of a pain in the butt having to drag that thing around with me. So this time around, I want to make sure that this thing is usable all the time and I don't have to worry about bringing anything extra with me. So we're going to be mounting a power source for this thing permanently to this trailer. And luckily, Vevor has decided to help us out with part of that. Well, when I started planning this project out, I knew I wanted to do something kind of permanent, and I figured the best way to go about that would be a tongue box. I did some looking online and actually found that the one Vevor is selling is right about perfect for what I'm needing. I reached out to them. They've actually been on the channel before, so this wouldn't be the first time. But yeah, they decided to help out this project and send me one of these tongue boxes to try out. So this is their, I believe, 36-inch carbon steel is what they called it. I think the dimensions are 36 by 12 by 12. And for the record, I just want to say I'm shocked that this thing showed up undamaged. The amount of effort and time they put into the packaging to ensure this thing wasn't damaged in shipping is awesome. Now you guys know I don't like overcomplicated or unnecessarily expensive things, and that is, I think, what I like most about this particular tongue box. It's plain and simple, nothing fancy about it. It does have a locking feature to keep people from stealing your stuff. It has got a shock to assist with the lid opening, powder coated on both sides, and it has got some foam tape around the lid that supposedly makes this thing waterproof. Now, if any of you guys decide you want to try one of these out, I will put my affiliate link for this in the description, as well as a 5% off coupon code that you guys can use. Right now, these are selling for 90 bucks, free shipping, which I think is a really good deal for something like this. So we are going to mount up a battery inside this box. I haven't decided exactly what battery I want to use yet. For simplicity's sake, I'm probably going to use one of these U1 batteries, the lawnmower batteries. They're relatively cheap, they're small, and as I've used it several times in the past, I know it's got plenty of power to work the winch. As well as mounting the battery, we also need to mount all this stuff right here. This is the winch controller, the inline fuse, and the power wires. We'll have to put a grommet, run the wires out through the back side of this tongue box up to the winch. Now I know some of you guys are probably wondering, well, how am I going to charge this battery? Now I've seen guys do it, mount just a trickle charger inside the box with a plug. They can plug their extension cord in it, charge it up every once in a while. I've even seen guys put some small solar panels on the lids of these. All those are good options, they work just fine. However, this is my plan. Right now, this trailer has just got a flat 4-pin on it, which is pretty common for what you're gonna find on these smaller ones. However, my truck that I use to pull this with has got a 7, like most trucks. However, with that 7-pin, on top of the wires for your turn signals, your brake lights, everything like that, there's also a constant wire. I think it's called the auxiliary. So my plan is we're gonna mount all this stuff up, we're gonna get it wired, and then I'm going to actually swap this trailer over to a 7-pin. So by doing that, I'm going to retain all my factory turn signals and brake lights and stuff like that. However, I'm going to have constant battery voltage going to this wire here that I am in turn going to run to this battery. So anytime that this trailer is plugged into my truck, it's going to be charging this battery. Now there's pros and cons to everything. Obviously, if I left this trailer plugged into my truck for a year straight, it would probably end up killing my truck batteries. Not that worried about it. Now I haven't exactly figured out where I'm going to put everything inside the box. In order to do that, we're going to go ahead and get this thing mounted on the trailer, and we'll start piecing it together. But in order to mount this, I need to do something on the trailer real quick. Now I'm not quite sure why, but whenever this trailer was assembled, they put the jack for it in this position instead of further up here, closer to the hitch. Now unfortunately, in order to make that tongue box fit, we're going to have to move this. Not a big deal. We've already got the cutout here. The bolt holes are already there. Figured we might as well put some new hardware on this thing as well. I went ahead and cleaned up that cross member down there where this box is going to be sitting on top of, since we're not going to see it for a very long time once we mount this. Now the beauty of this box, since it's so universal, I've got several options on how I could mount this thing to the trailer. I could just go through and mark a couple holes, drill straight down and through bolt it. That would be just fine. But I think what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to do something a little bit nicer, or I should say fancier. I'm going to use some of these nut certs or riv nuts, depends on who you ask. I'm going to use some 3/8 by 16. I've already got some new bolts. Well, I think I got these holes equally marked on both sides. I used some fancy technology to find the center. Not really, I kind of guessed, but we should be okay. And Don't mind my counterweight. I had no way to clamp this tongue box down. So I figured I'd put some counterweight in it to make sure it doesn't move while we drill these holes. Now I don't actually own a 9/16 drill bit, but I do own a 1/2 inch unibit, and I think I can waller it out enough with this. Well, I had a brand new unibit. The tip of that just broke off. Oh, got it. That took entirely way too long. All right, so like I was saying, I'm gonna drill these out to a 1/4 inch, and then I'm gonna use a unibit to bore them out to 1/2 inch. Now, even though the tip's broken on this, we can still use it. And boy, let me tell you, the quality of this Milwaukee step bit compared to my Harbor Freight ones, even though this one broke, it cuts this so much better. Well, we got the holes drilled out to the right size. We're gonna go and put these nut certs in. Pretty simple little tool to use. Thread your nut cert on the die. Most of the time when you buy these kits, they come with a bunch of different sizes, and that's how this one is. I was always told when you run this down, leave it kind of loose. Don't run it down snug because it makes it harder to get off. So I'm gonna leave a little gap there at the top, and we're gonna put this in. And it's that simple. Unthread the tool from your nut cert, and there you go. You've got a nice factory looking fastener where you want it at. So I'm gonna do these other 3, and I'll bring you back when we're ready to mount that tongue box. Hopefully my measurements were correct. My drill bits didn't walk. I will say one thing about these nut certs. What can happen is your fastener can actually rust inside the nut cert, and whenever you go to take it out, it'll spin on you. And it's an absolute pain in the butt if that happens. So I highly recommend if you do that, use some anti-seize or some copper coat, some kind of never seize on your hardware to reduce the risk of that happening to you, because it's a pain in the butt if it does. Same as when you're tightening these, don't go ham with it. You go too tight, you'll spin that nut cert. Well, now that we know where the tongue box is going to go, I can start mocking up some of this wiring and the circuit breaker and the control box for this winch. And I'll show you kind of what I got in mind. So like I mentioned, I've got this set up right now kind of the way I want it with a U1 battery. I'm going to, I don't know how I'm going to do it yet. I'm going to build a hold down to hold this battery in place. And this winch controller, I'm going to put over here in the corner. Probably mount that to the back wall there. Those leads coming out there go to the winch. So I'll blow a hole right here, put a grommet, we'll run them wires through. These are the super long wires that are meant to go to the battery. So we'll do some tidying up on that. And then we'll just have to put a hole somewhere in here for the new feed wire to come through from the plug. So I think to save a feller's back here and to make it easier, I'm gonna go ahead and take this tongue box back off, put it up on the bench, and we'll get to work on it. Well, here's what I'm thinking to start with. I'm going to use some of this round stock to make a battery hold down. It's kind of like when I build the battery mounts for the wheel horses. I'm going to use this and we'll cut it to the right length. That is going to be the hold down on top, and I'll burn a couple nuts or washers on each end to have something for a fastener to hold on to. And then I'm going to drill a couple holes in the bottom. We'll take some more round rod, bend a crook in the end. It'll hook down in the bottom and stand straight up. And yeah, it'll make sense when you see it all together. Okay, let's put all the pieces together now. Well, like I said, this is going to be open on the bottom. It's going to look kind of funny right now because the box is going to be sitting on top of these. But essentially, you just put those in. Set your battery in place. Take your hold down. Put you a couple 1/4x20 nuts on there. And there you go. You got a nice, custom, handmade battery hold down. Well, we're ready to go ahead and put these battery wires on the winch. All right, now this is going to be one of those times where I tell you guys to do as I say and not as I do. So from the factory new, this winch controller comes with this inline circuit breaker. This is here for a reason, okay? If you run this winch too long out of its duty cycle, it starts getting hot, or there's a short, it draws too much voltage, this circuit breaker will trip to keep you from catching your winch on fire, burning your trailer, and your precious cargo down. However, I'm going to cut it out. I'm not going to use it. Now, I will say in my defense, when I wired up that other trailer, I also removed the circuit breaker and I had no issues with it. But if you put this winch on a side-by-side and you use it non-stop all the time, don't cut it out like I'm doing. Leave it in line. Otherwise, you'll burn your four-wheeler down and somebody will blame me. I am going to leave these wires a little on the long side. If for whatever reason I decide to put a bigger battery in this thing, I want to be able to use the same wires. So I'm going to cut these down a little long. That's looking pretty good, guys. I went ahead and put me a cush clamp up here to help hold these wires. I can't stand seeing wires flopping around. But yeah, I would say that the winch wiring is pretty much done for now. The only other thing I have left to do for the winch is to run that charge wire for my new 7-way, but we'll take care of that here in a little bit. Well, we are ready to go ahead and get this new 7-way wired in. This is just a piece I bought off Amazon. It's like 4 foot of wire with a new plug on it. Seems like pretty decent quality. Now, for the most part, this is a pretty straightforward deal. We have got 5 wires on our 4-pin. Yeah, I know, kind of confusing, but let me explain. So the reason they end up using 5 wires on a 4-pin is just for simplicity of wiring the rest of the trailer. Your white is always going to be ground on a 4-pin, should be. And then your yellow is, I believe, your driver's side turn, and your green is your right-hand turn. And your brown wire is normally your marker. Well, on a 5-wire 4-pin, they wire in an additional marker wire, a brown wire on the same pin. And that is just so, I believe they call it a wishbone design. Whenever it hits the trailer, they can run a marker light to that side and a marker light to that side, and that prevents them from having to jump the two sides together on the other end of the trailer. Makes it a lot easier to work on, diagnose. Anyway, now I've done quite a bit of wiring work on trailers, but for whatever reason, in order for my brain to comprehend what I'm doing, I always have to draw a picture and write it down so I fully understand. And the other thing you need to do if you guys buy one of these whips off Amazon, don't go off the 7-pin wiring diagrams that you find, and I'll tell you why. So your traditional 7-pin, if you look up a diagram online, it's going to tell you that your right hand turn is yellow and your left hand turn is green. I might have that backwards. What you have to watch is, on these pre-made 7-ways, they don't necessarily care about wire color. All they really care about is the length of wire and making sure it's connected to the pins on that end. So when I got my voltmeter out, my multimeter, I went through and double checked, and sure enough, my left hand turn's actually red, my right hand turn's brown, my tail light is green. So there's some discrepancies there. If you guys ever use one of those, make sure you double check. Otherwise, you're going to be throwing tools and scratching your head, and it'll just be a bad deal. Now, since I've done all that, this is going to be pretty straightforward. All we're going to do is splice off this 4-pin. Our white's going to go to our white. The 2 browns, we're going to tie in with the green. Pretty much we're going to do yellow to red and then green to brown. And that's pretty much going to be it. With the exception of our accessory wire, the black wire, we are going to be running a length of that up here to our battery to charge it. So enough talking, let's go ahead and get some cutting going on and some splicing and some heat shrinking and all that good stuff. All right, I got everything wired up. I think the only thing to do now is test it. So you guys watch back there. I'm gonna go through and touch these prongs on this 7-way. All right, so this should be passenger side turn. All right, we're off to a good start. How about driver's side turn? Yep. And how about the marker lights? Looks like they're working to me. Well, you guys remember that circuit breaker I told you I wasn't going to use with the winch? I have repurposed it. We are going to use this to splice into the accessory wire going to the 7-way on the truck. In my mind, which probably doesn't make sense to a lot of you guys, I would rather have the protection on the circuit going to the truck than I would on the trailer, because I'm probably going to leave this thing plugged in, you know, a couple days at a time. And I would rather make sure my truck doesn't burn down instead of this $75 winch. So we're going to fish this down through. I already drilled that out. Got me a nice little grommet put in. Yeah, should look pretty good. All right, all I got to do now is hook this up to the positive side of the battery. I'll probably just zip tie this to this cush clamp, keep it from moving. And then we just got to splice that in to the new pigtail. Guys, I have been working on the wiring on this for way too long, but I'm kind of nitpicky about it. Let's go ahead and show you guys the finished product. So we've got our winch power wires coming out of a nice grommet on the back of the tongue box, running up to the winch. I left them kind of loose, that way they're not going to rip or tug if I hit it with something. Look at that. Man, the wire management. So anyway, those wires going from the winch go to the winch controller. We have got our feed wires coming up and around going to the battery. We've also got our new charge circuit coming off the positive terminal up through a circuit breaker for protection, down through a real nice grommet to the channel on the trailer where it joins in with the rest of the wiring and goes to this real nice 7-way connector. I also, just to play it safe, I went ahead and added a battery ground to the trailer. I've got that looped up and around as well, going to one of our mounting bolts. Well, we are quickly dwindling down to the few final things I've got left to do on this trailer. One of which is replacing these old, broken, inoperable lights with something a little bit newer, a little bit brighter, and hopefully a little bit safer. On my last trailer, I replaced all the square lights with these round dot lights. These things are extremely bright, and they held up for well over a year on my trailer, so I know they're pretty durable. We'll be going through and replacing the 4 square markers on the trailer now with these. And here on the back, that center one we'll be replacing with 3 of the red. And to replace this busted light here, I have got 2 brand new flush mount oval, I don't know how else to explain them. There you go, 6-inch oval trailer light with bracket. This is actually the same brand that I use for the other lights I put on my other trailer. Again, same deal, these are very good lights. And if this light ever fails and you're out on the road, this light here is something you can get about at any truck stop, parts store. It's a very common size. And I'll be sure to put the links for these lights down in the description, so if you guys want to check them out, you can. Probably not going to show you guys replacing every single light, so I'll probably just do this tail light in this rear section here. Should be pretty straightforward. I'll never understand why people use these, twist nuts or whatever they're called on automotive wiring. I mean, I guess I get why they do it, because, you know, it's quick and easy. But what happens is dirt and corrosion get up inside of it, and it still causes the wires to corrode, and you still end up having to cut them anyway. Just my 2 cents. Boy, it sure is convenient having a battery up here. All I gotta do is put my jump leads on it and test it with my 7-way. All right, this here should be marker. All right, judging by the reflection, I think it's working. And this should be our brake light. Oh yeah, look how nice and bright that is. Cool, let's move on to the rest of these lights. I almost forgot. See, like I was saying, these are all daisy chained together. And actually the ground looks like they used one of these mounting bolts here. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna snip this off right here. And actually there won't be any wiring exposed now the way I'm gonna do this. So we're gonna pull this back in, and we'll get the old grinder out, see if I can't get these broken screws off, clean this up a little bit. And then we are going to decide where we want these 3 lights to go, what the spacing should be. Now, I know I said I wasn't going to repaint this whole trailer, and I'm not. But this bottom rail here, I mean, you figure this probably gets a lot of use. It needs a coat of paint. The powder coating is chipping off. So I'm just real quickly going to go through and knock the big chunks off, and we're going to fog this black, and then we'll get our holes marked and drill some holes. This is my last can of Rust-Oleum, so hopefully we got enough here to do this. You guys know how this goes, right? I'm gonna paint enough of this thing that it's not gonna look right, and I'm gonna have to repaint the entire trailer. That's how it goes. It's a vicious cycle. All right, so I know that this tail angle piece here is 76 inches wide. Not because I'm a genius, but because I measured it off camera. So we got 3 lights, so I think the easiest thing to do, so we're gonna measure over and mark our halfway point, which would be 38. I don't know how well you guys will be able to see it, but here's our halfway mark. So what I'm thinking I'm gonna do, since we already have this hole right here drilled, that was the original grommet pass through for the old light. I think that we're gonna make that our spacing. So halfway to halfway is 5 3/4, or should I say center to center. So then we're gonna come over here and do the same thing, 5 3/4. Now it says these lights are 3/4 inch lights, and it says that's the actual size of the outside of the grommet. So I think as long as you don't drill over 3/4 of an inch, you'll still have a good tight fit. I think my plan is going to be, instead of making this complicated wiring harness, all I'm going to do is tie these 3 lights together on the back side of this rail. And as you guys can see, there's not a whole lot of room for a camera, so you'll have to take my word for it. But essentially, our red wire is going to be our tail light wire, our power wire. We'll tie all the reds together with one connector going to the power wire, and then we'll tie all the grounds together, and I'll put a little jumper on it, and we'll have one ground for all these 3 lights. So if any of these go out, we know it's an issue with only 1 or 2 wires that feed them. So seems simpler to me than having 3 separate grounds. But yeah, the grommets pull off them lights real simple. Once you get them in, just a matter of feeding the wires through, pushing them in. I love how simple these lights are and how they give it a nice, clean, flush look. No big light bar sticking off. I mean, you'd really have to be trying to catch this with your foot, or, you know what I mean, with a strap. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and get these all wired up together, and I'll bring you guys back, and we'll check and see if they're working. Well, there's only one way to test lights, and that's in complete darkness. So let's see what they look like. That is ridiculous. Don't mind the creepy kid back there in the dark eating a popsicle. Anyways, you can see I got the amber ones hooked up. I did those off camera like I said I would. Walk around back here. And again, this is just the tail light, the marker light function. This isn't the brake light. These would be even brighter with the brake lights. But those are the 3 center lights you saw me put on. Nice and bright, flush, very clean look. The other driver's side, tail light. And then we got these 2 amber ones over on this side. For as cheap as them little flush lights are, I'm very impressed with those things. So if you guys are interested in rewiring your trailer, definitely check those out. Well, we are winding down on the trailer project. There's only really 2 or 3 more things I want to do to this. Now I want to turn my attention to a weed eater rack. Now I know that may sound kind of strange to some of you guys. If any of you are new to the channel, you probably don't know. The ones that's been on here for a while know, and I've mentioned it a few times. As well as working full-time and making videos, I've also got 5 or 6 yards that I maintain every week. So what I've always done in the past is I've always just threw the old Hyper Tough in the bed of the truck whenever I go to cut my yards. Nothing wrong with that. I could honestly keep doing that. But recently I've upgraded. Now I'm not going to turn this into a tangent talking about weed eaters, but this old Hyper Tough here, I bought this from Walmart like 4 years ago, and I just can't kill it. The thing fires up every time. It sits all winter with bad gas in it, and it will not die. I've restrung that head I don't know how many times. It works great. I really honestly don't need a replacement. But here recently, I picked up some extra work where I'm going to have to do some, I don't want to say brush removal. I've got some thicker weeds and stuff I'm going to have to clear out of a ditch on one of my customers' yards. So because of that, I figured it was time to pull the trigger and get something a little bit better. So I picked up this FS56 as well as the saw blade for it, and hopefully it's going to do what I need it to do. Now where that's relevant at is, since I've got 2 weed eaters now, I'm wanting to do something a little bit more professional, something that looks a little bit better, and something that's, you know, better than just these things rolling around in the bed of the truck. Hyper Tough I could care less about. If it fell out of the bed of the truck, I wouldn't be upset about it. But this new steel, I'm kind of partial to it since it's new and shiny, and I would like to make sure that this thing has a safe transit from the barn to my customer's yard. Now again, looking on the old Amazon, there's a million different options that you can get. They sell racks essentially that go on your trailer that you can mount 1, 2, 3, I think up to like, hell, I saw some up to 4 or 5. And prices back and forth. Some of them are 20 bucks all the way up to 200. Just depends on which way you want to go. Now what I'm going to do instead, and you guys know my style, everyone says I'm cheap. I like to say I'm frugal. So instead of buying something from Amazon for, you know, 20, 30, 40, $200, whatever it might be, I'm going to try making my own out of some scrap metal. Now this is just some 2-inch square tubing I had left over. Actually, a friend gave it to me. He chopped up a yard swing and asked me if I wanted this stuff, and I said, well, absolutely. So this is kind of going to be the basis for the rack. I'm going to knock those leftover tubes off. I'm going to weld a couple plates on the bottom. Once we do that, I'll have something to clamp down on. We'll get it squared up on the trailer, and I'll get a tape measure, and we'll figure out, you know, the height and all that good stuff. So let's get to work on this. So this is what I got in mind for the passenger side mount. I want something I can just slip the weed eater down into. This is just some 1-inch strap metal or 1-inch, anyway, it's 1-inch steel. I got it from the hardware store. So this has got a little bit of flex in it, which is what you want. I want it tight when it slips down in there. So I think this will work good. What I'll end up doing is I'll have all this room down here where I can weld this to this brace. So I think it'll work out pretty good. Now I just need to try to make another one identical out of some more material. Well, I'd say they turned out pretty good, guys. I couldn't get my old wire wheel in there to clean that slag up. I'll have to do that by hand, but yeah, we got these all welded on. Got that side welded on. It's looking good. I'm going to do one more final mock-up, and if everything goes right, the next time I bring you guys back, you'll see these painted and installed on the trailer. Well, I'm going to call that one done. Oh, wait. There we go. Now it's done. Yeah, overall, guys, I'm pretty happy with how that weed eater rack turned out. Again, considering it only took me a couple hours of my time and just some scrap metal I had laying around, but you guys get the concept of it now. We've got some locking pins on this end, so this side doesn't come out. That side's open, so whenever I go to use this, pop the pin out, slip it off, use it, set it back on. Should work just fine. I bet you guys thought I forgot about the license plate light, didn't you? Well, that's probably because I did, but I found a fix for that. I found the perfect afterthought license plate light. These were on Amazon, relatively cheap. It was a 2-pack for like $7 or something. And man, these bugs are terrible out here. Anyway, real simple LED, white LED I might add. And if the camera will focus, it's got a threaded portion of the light to where you just drill a hole, slip this through, tighten your jam nut down, wire it up, and you're good to go. And as you can see, I've got the other one already put on the bracket. I've just got to tie the wires in to the existing wiring, and that should be a wrap on all the lights. I need to do something about this deck. So as the video started, I actually went through and completely pressure washed this thing. The wood's not in too bad a shape. I mean, it's definitely got some usage on it. but it's not rotten and it's still very solid. And I wanted to make sure I treated it in some way to hopefully get as much life out of it as possible. Now, I did do quite a bit of research trying to figure out if I should use a stain or a lacquer or a poly coat. I'm not familiar at all when it comes to woodworking stuff, so I was kind of at the mercy of the old internet. Now, I know I could go through and paint it, stain it, you know, there's 100 different things I can do, but I kept coming back to the same result that seems to be the most efficient and the longest lasting. And I was a little bit surprised by what it is. So what we're going to use to treat this deck is used engine oil. Now again, I'm not taking credit for this. I think I actually saw a TikTok video of a guy doing this, which kind of led me down that rabbit hole of making sure that dude just wasn't a psycho. But no, used engine oil, I guess, is a very good, affordable, efficient way to treat your trailer decks. So I'm anxious to try it out. I've got some 4-inch chip brushes. I think the rain has finally let up for the first time in like a week. So I'm gonna get this thing pulled outside and we're gonna get to work on staining that deck. If you guys do this at home, I recommend putting a tarp down, you know, because this is probably gonna make quite a bit of mess. Or if you got a neighbor you don't like, ask to do it in his yard. Well, I don't really know the best way to go about this, so I guess I'm just gonna start dumping some oil on this and see what happens. Oh, I'm gonna need a lot of oil. You can see I'd already soaked that up. Well, I've got about 2 gallons of used oil with the ability to get more if needed. So hopefully I'll have enough. Well, you guys get the gist of it. So I'm gonna set y'all up on a time lapse and I'll bring you back when I'm done. Well, I've got that first coat all done. Everything I read online said that whenever this dries, it dries without a film on it. You know, you would think this engine oil would make it slimy on top. Supposedly it doesn't, so we're gonna let this sit up and cure, and we're gonna check it out when it's dry. Well guys, I think we're going to call this project done. We got a lot of stuff accomplished on this trailer. A lot of stuff I wanted to get done and some stuff I wasn't planning on doing. So we've got new hubs and bearings on both sides, all new LED marker lights. We've got a very nice winch mount with a brand new 2,500 pound winch and a very nice V-Vor tongue box that complements that winch great. You guys can see here, I've got my battery, everything set up in here. I've got all my winch controls over here. Over on this side, I've got some extra rigging, some shackles, and I've also got some extra Weedeater parts for whenever I use this custom handmade Weedeater rack. I'm also extremely happy with how this deck turned out. Like I'd mentioned earlier, when this thing dried, it soaked all that oil up. There's no residue left on it, and honestly, I could probably do another coat on this. We also can't forget about these new fenders from Southwest Wheel. These things went on great, and I managed with my lack of welding skills to glue them on here pretty good, so we shouldn't have any issues out of these for a long time. So yeah guys, I appreciate all y'all for following along when I did a transformation on this trailer. I'm very excited to put this thing to work. I had plans on showing you guys the winch working, but we have gotten like 3 inches of rain here in the last like 4 days, and the junkyard where all my wheel horsers are sitting at is just mud right now. Also, if you guys are in the market for a tongue box, be sure to check out this one from V-Vor. I'll make sure I put the link in the description as well as a 5% off coupon. So yeah, you guys do your thing. Subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and I'll see you on the next one.